Okay, it's 7 o'clock, it just passed. And we just did our summer reading awards. Lots of great kids did a lot of good work. So now called the regular city council meeting to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Carling,
I'm here.
Councilmember Kick. Here. Councilmember Monroe,
Here.
Vice Mayor Bonanno,
Here.
Mayor Warner.
Here. Can you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we're on to item 2.1, a proclamation declaring September 18, 24, 2022 as Pollution Prevention Week. And Councilmember Carling will present it to Jennifer Pete, our acting source control coordinator with the city of Livermore.
Did I do this right? I guess I did. So is Jennifer here? Come on up. Thank you. So I'm going to read the proclamation. Whereas the city of Livermore takes great pride in protecting and maintaining its landscapes, watersheds, and natural resources, and whereas pollution in the form of trash and debris, chemicals from industry and everyday living, and sediment from construction and some land uses have the potential to degrade the quality of life and the quality of resources within Livermore's watersheds. And whereas the City of Livermore Water Resources Division supports programs to reduce pollution, increase the environmental quality of our watersheds, and provide our community with the knowledge to be effective environmental stewards. And whereas the City of Livermore recognizes the 32nd anniversary of the Pollution Prevention Act of 1990, where Congress declared it to be a national policy of the United States of America that pollution should be prevented or reduced at the source whenever feasible. And whereas the third week of September is nationally recognized as Pollution Prevention Week and is an opportunity for the city of Livermore to join forces with business, industry, environmental groups, community organizations, and the citizens of Livermore to ensure a prosperous and sustainable future. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Livermore proclaims the week of September 18th to the 24th, 2022 as Pollution Prevention Week and urges all community members and businesses to reduce, reuse, and recycle. Only let rain flow down storm drains. Conserve water. Prevent sewer overflows by not putting fats, oils, or grease down drains or flushing disposable wipes. And pick up litter in our community. So congratulations very much. Would you like to say a few words?
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Pete, and I am the current acting source control coordinator for the city's Water Resources Division. Next week is National Pollution Prevention Week, which is an opportunity for us to come together to educate our citizens, businesses, and local community organizations on the importance of stormwater and wastewater pollution prevention. So pollution prevention is a topic that is important to me because it affects so many aspects of our lives and the natural resources that we enjoy every day. The source control program works hard to ensure that the city stays in compliance with the Stormwater Municipal Regional Permit that is issued to the city by the California State Water Resources Control Board, and also to help protect the wastewater collection system from pollutants that have the potential to damage the city's water reclamation plant. This year, we celebrate the EPA's 50th anniversary of the Clean Water Act. We've made huge strides towards achieving its original goals, but we still have a lot of work to do. So it is the small things, such as celebrating Pollution Prevention Week, that allow us to come together as a community to protect our most precious resource, which is clean water. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're on to, no, I think you can talk more if you'd like. We're on to item 2.2, the Livermore Housing Authority Annual Update presented by Executive Director Sarah Remler.
My name is Sarah Ramler. I'm the new Executive Director for the Livermore Housing Authority. I joined the organization approximately 3 weeks ago, but I'm happy to be here to share a little bit about some of the activities that we're pursuing at the Housing Authority and to tell you a little bit about some of our programming. So high level, the Housing Authority administers 2 major programming areas. One is our Housing Choice Voucher Program, also known as the Section 8 program. This is voucher rental subsidies, and currently we're serving 533 households in the city of Livermore. We also, I've listed in the PowerPoint, a couple of other special programs that we administer, but one particular program to note is the project-based voucher subsidy program. That has grown substantially over the last year. And those are subsidies that are assigned to particular units versus particular tenants. And that's a program that we're working with the city in partnership to continue to grow. So I think part of our initiatives for this coming year and forward are to continue to coordinate with the city in expanding that project or that program. Also, LHA owns 167 properties across the city of Livermore. One of the most notable is Leahy Square, which is currently our public housing property that has 125 units. We are converting this project out of public housing and into affordable units that will maintain affordability for at least the next 30 years, but likely indefinitely. So we're currently undergoing that conversion. This is after a $2.4 million investment into the rehabilitation of the site and improving security and other items. And then, of course, we have some other programs listed there as well, or properties listed there as well. So I wanted to just give you a really high level breakdown of some of the demographics for a couple of the programs that we're operating. So highlighting our LHA owned properties, including Leahy Square, among others. We primarily are serving 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom households, and a little over 60% of our households are non-elderly for this particular program, and a little over half do not have children. So we're housing about 42% of families with children. And this is, of course, our public housing property that we'll be converting, and then some of our smaller properties across the city. And then highlighting the Housing Choice Voucher Program. This is a little bit more split, slightly more elderly families in this particular program, and a lot less families with children, but we're serving mostly 1 and 2 bedrooms, and largely in apartment type rentals across the city. Then looking forward at some key LHA initiatives for the next year and onward, 2 main things that we want to look at doing are improving some of our properties. And then we also want to look to expand our programming by way of HUD funding and coordinating with city grants as well. So as I mentioned, Leahy underwent a $2.4 million rehabilitation, and we are beginning Bluebell. We're breaking ground on Bluebell rehabilitation here in the next week or so. And then looking ahead, Chestnut and Las Posadas are 2 properties that we're hoping to begin renovations on and rehabilitation in the next couple of years. In terms of increasing HUD funding and expanding the program, we have pursued mainstream voucher programming. I want to highlight our VASH program, which is Housing for Veterans. And we are going to partner with the VA and hope to or anticipate being awarded an additional 5 vouchers in the next few months. And then, of course, as mentioned, we want to continue project-based initiatives, and I've listed some of those in the presentation. And we will be providing some on-site housing services in partnership with the city using the funds from the State of California's Family Homelessness Challenge Grant. And that's a pretty high level view. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Well, thank you. It's, it was a good high level, but very comprehensive. So welcome.
Thank you so much.
We're glad you're here, and really appreciate the work of the Housing Authority.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to?
Oh, yeah, thank you so much for that and presentation and welcome. I have a question about the Leahy conversion. Can you talk a little bit about what enabled that, what motivates it, and maybe what the benefits will be to the residents there? Just, I know it's a very positive thing. I'm just not quite sure how it all came to be and what
Sure.
you can just say a little bit more about that.
Sure. Big picture, for many, many years, HUD has been decreasing funding for public housing projects across the country. It's made it extremely challenging to keep the properties up in habitable conditions. Leahy in particular, I would say, has been kept up pretty well. But HUD is doing away generally with a public housing program and offering streamlined opportunities to convert out of that model where they are owned, operated by housing authorities and they are owned by third-party entities and operated oftentimes by property management companies, and they receive much higher rents that are comparable to market rate rents versus below market rents that are really dependent on appropriation. So it came about through a NOFA with HUD, or I'm sorry, an opportunity with HUD under Section 22. It's going to basically offer an increased revenue stream for the property and allow us to continue to maintain the property.
But the residents could only benefit from this. I mean, no residents will have to be transitioned out of the property or?
No, so they will, all the residents will have an opportunity to take a
Mhm.
Section 8 voucher and move out of the community if they would like, or they will be able to remain in the community with their rents not increasing.
Okay.
We're also going to be offering additional supportive services on the property, which is something that we were not able to do in the past. And so the benefits to residents are the flexibility to relocate with a subsidy, and also if they choose to stay, enhanced services and
Sure.
support.
Great. Thanks so much.
Sure.
Appreciate that.
So thank you very much for that report. That was really informative. I'm wondering, are there opportunities for members of the community who don't live in housing, in this form of housing, to participate, to get to know people, to act as mentors perhaps? You said support services, participate in that. Is there, what I'm looking at is, are there ways to make connections between people who live, for example, in Leahy Square and people who live in the surrounding neighborhood?
I think that one thing we're interested in doing is pursuing, enhancing some established relationships, and then also pursuing some new relationships with either nonprofit entities or other city partners. We are forming a relationship with the school district now, and I think we want to grow that. And we invited the police department out to do a safety assessment several months ago. That's another relationship we want to continue to grow. But I think that we are looking to build that up, but we don't have a whole lot in place right now.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Looking forward to the next one. Okay, we're now on to item 3.0, the Citizens Forum. And the city clerk, could please explain the process for participating in tonight's meeting?
Thank you, Mayor. The City Council's agenda provides opportunities for the public to participate in the meeting by addressing the City Council in the following ways. For non-agendized items, the public has the opportunity during Citizens Forum to address the City Council on any item of interest that is within the City Council's subject matter jurisdiction. For agendized items, the public can address the City Council on each item of business it considers when the mayor opens public comment and should be focused on that particular item. Please note, a speaker is not required to answer any questions from the City Council, and the City Council is not required to answer any questions from the public. However, the mayor has the discretion to ask staff to address the speaker's comments when a council member believes it is relevant to a particular business item. When participating in tonight's meeting, one comment may be given per person per item. Members of the public can participate in person or remotely as noticed on the agenda. To provide comment in person, please fill out and turn in a speaker card found at the entrance of the council chamber. Speakers will be announced in the order received. We will hear from members of the public who are in person first, followed by those who wish to speak on Zoom. To provide comment by Zoom, please use the raise hand feature or *9 if calling in when the item begins. Please do not wait until the public comment period opens for each item to raise your hand. Instead, raise your hand at the beginning of each item. Once public comment opens, each participant's name will be announced and their 3 minutes will begin once they reach the lectern or upon being unmuted. The mayor will announce the conclusion of the public comment period after comments have been voiced into the record. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we generally allow 30 minutes at the beginning of the meeting for public comment, and any carryovers then at the end. It's 7:17 now or so. So we'll take the public comment until 7:47. And the city clerk will announce when there's 5 minutes remaining, and any spillover, as I say, we'll take up at the end of the agenda. City clerk, could you now handle the process for a citizens forum?
Yes, Mayor. Our first speaker is Barbara Nichols Reynolds.
Can you hear me okay? Oh,
Yes.
okay. All right. Good evening, Mayor, and each and every city council member. I appreciate you. I'm here. My topic is the recent power outages. Instead of blaming PG&E, I turn to you, Livermore City Council. A number one top priority for our city council should be the safety of Livermore residents. My family and I were sick with COVID when the outages happened. It was 116 that day. It was miserable. If we had wanted to, we could have gone to a hotel. However, my concern is for the many thousands of Livermore residents who had no choice and could not go to a hotel. An even bigger concern are Livermore senior citizens. I'm on a board and I also work closely with the seniors. Livermore could have had heat-related deaths. The information residents did receive from PG&E was extremely vague. I propose that one city council member take on the position of liaison between the city and PG&E. The city council liaison would be in close communication with PG&E only when warranted. This person would be in charge of information of informing Livermore residents with specific detailed information concerning the current situation. Secondly, I'm happy to volunteer to work with this city council member. I would facilitate a team of volunteers to call and/or knock on the doors of seniors to check on their safety. I look forward to your response and thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Greg Scott.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Livermore City Council, City of Livermore staff and audience. I am Greg Scott. Like a bad penny, I'm back. I am a survivor. For those of you that are new on the City Council and on city staff since the pandemic, I spoke on homelessness from the second City Council meeting, September of 2017, through the first meeting in March of 2020 before the pandemic lockdown, missing only 2 meetings. I was acquainted with 6 of the homeless who died during the pandemic. There were at least 4 others who died that I did not know. The fatuous surveys from contract sycophant CityServe didn't help them out much. Neither did the expensive temporary housing. Vineyard 2.0 is at least a $20 million project that includes housing for 23. Those that are not housed behind those castle walls are to do what? I was homeless in this Livermore city area for just under 7 years. I am recently housed. The problem of homelessness is fundamentally a socioeconomic justice problem. I'm a graduate of the University of California. To get there, I graduated from a California high school, which required for a diploma, a class in civics, that is American government, and a class in US history. Let's get this straight and lucid. A referendum is not a vote. Signing a petition for a referendum is not a vote. Not signing a petition for a referendum is not a vote. Voting occurs at a ballot box administered by the State Secretary of State. Signing a petition for a referendum is a request for a referendum to be put on the ballot. If the required number of signatures is met or exceeded and required provisions met, then by democratic process, the referendum needs to be placed on the ballot. Anything else is non-democratic. What does the city of Livermore have to fear by a referendum on the ballot of the location of the Eden Housing Project? It has been one shenanigan after another with the current location of the Eden Housing Project. I never learned in my high school civics class that municipal governments were loan institutions, nor did they hand over land readily like the municipal governments did they deed over land readily like the municipal governments in the totalitarian capitalist nation of the People's Republic of China? How is it the so-called nonprofit of Eden Housing solving the socioeconomic injustice of affordable housing when its executive director makes $415,000 a year and the top 17 income earners at Eden Housing receive 40% of the payroll? This is not a solution. This is only exacerbating the problem. Not only is the current location of the Eden Housing Project the wrong location, and not only does the whole deal with the location of Eden Housing Project smell, it reeks.
Our next speaker is Las Positas College Veterans First Program.
Hello, Mayor Warner, Vice Mayor, and council members. My name is Jennifer Linninger, and I am the Veterans Outreach Specialist at Las Positas College. Our college is located here in Livermore, and we have over 300 men and women who have served in the armed forces that attend our school. In the Veterans First Office, our goal is to provide resources to our student veterans to help them adjust to civilian life, battle internal challenges, stay connected, be successful in school and in life, but most importantly, prevent veteran suicide. On a national level, 22 veterans lose their battle to suicide every day. We want to do our part in raising awareness. That is 22 too many. On behalf of the Veterans First Program, I would like to invite you and the Livermore community to our upcoming 2.2 for 22 challenge for veterans. It starts on October 1st through October 22nd. We challenge you to join us for 22 days. Each day you will log into the event, complete a virtual activity, whether it's 22 jumping jacks or as easy as sitting still for 22 seconds. That's harder than you think. The last day, October 22nd, we will gather in person at Las Positas and do a few fun stations before you cross our finish line. Funds raised will go towards mental health programs and scholarships at Las Positas for our students. I left some flyers in the back to sign up, and you can also get more information from our college website about signing up as well. And we look forward to you joining us. At this time, I'd like to introduce Tim Tuitt, a student veteran in our program, to say a few words.
Thank you so much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Tim Tuitt. I'm a United States Marine Corps veteran. I'm currently working as a disability service liaison at Las Positas, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the veteran student body, just to discuss the 2.2 program and how much it means to us. For the student body and the veterans to see that the community is with us on standing against veteran suicide, it just lets us feel safe and welcome in the community, as well as supported by the members that matter about us. Just wanted to thank you for your time, and please urge you to take part in the program.
Absolutely. Flyers will be in the back. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, thank you.
The next speaker is John Marchand.
Good evening, Mayor Werner and members of the council. I would like to take this moment to thank the city clerk for saving the voters of Livermore what would have been a divisive display of political theater orchestrated by the leadership of a small group of individuals who are trying to create a sense of legitimacy by creating new names every few months, most recently calling themselves Move Eden Housing. Both the city clerk and the city attorney notified the leadership of this group that the action taken by the city council to sell the land to Eden Housing was administrative in nature, not legislative, and therefore not subject to referendum. Despite knowing this beforehand, this same group persisted in spending over $100,000 to harass Livermore voters and collect signatures for what they knew was an invalid referendum. This enabled a number of misleading ads. It fired up their base, to write indignant letters and claimed that their right to vote had been taken away. What is remarkable are the short memories of the members of this group. It was in the fall of 2019 when this same group qualified a legitimate initiative with almost 9,000 signatures. The city council placed that initiative on the ballot as required by law. In mid-2020, the leadership of this group of many names took that initiative off the ballot, ostensibly taking the right away to vote from those 9,000 signers. Curiously, not one of those 9,000 signers spoke up, contacted the council, or wrote a letter in protest. What we are seeing today with this invalid referendum is a manufactured crisis, a manufactured controversy, and in reality, it's just bad political theater. Thank you. And City Clerk, thank you so much.
The next speakers will be joined virtually. Alan Burnham, followed by Alan Marling and Joe McThorne. Alan Burnham, please unmute yourself.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. You've heard me say before that I wish those who had viable suggestions to improve the downtown plan had worked with the city rather than inciting divisive rhetoric. It is now over except for the soon-to-be resolved frivolous lawsuits. I had to laugh when I read in the newspaper this week that those still fighting had no choice but to appeal when their last suit failed. It reminded me of an old Flip Wilson comedy routine. Those of you as old as me probably remember it. Have they not heard of the concept of free will? I think they should consider the following prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Thank you.
The next speaker is Alan Marling, followed by Joe McThorne. Alan Marling, please unmute yourself.
Mayor, council members, and Livermore citizens, on the last day of August, Alameda County Superior Judge Michael M. Markham ruled in favor of Livermore and against Move Eden housing. The special interest group can lie to residents to collect signatures for their illegal referendum, and they can deceive readers of The Independent, but it's harder to hoodwink a judge and hide their true motive, blocking affordable housing. Despite having no legal case and no moral right to deny local workers shelter, Move Eden Housing appealed the ruling. Now, I couldn't help but wonder why. Three possible explanations follow for the special interest group's refusal to accept their defeat. First, chief donors and organizers Joan Sepla and Jean King could be wholly ignorant of the law and still believe they can win on legal grounds. Given how much they love litigating and how often they go to court, I find this unlikely. Their referendum seeks to reverse an administrative decision which is not subject to referendum. Two, Joan Sepla and Jean King may consider themselves Tri-Valley nobility, whose whims supersede laws. When City Clerk Mary Weber refused to humor them, they encouraged readers of The Independent to bully her into submission. Three, or they always knew they could not win in court. The referendum was simply a campaign stunt for Move Eden housing candidates. The trouble is, it's hard to campaign on a lie, which would have become increasingly obvious if the court case failed. They were forced to appeal to keep up the act, claiming they are the ones being wronged by the legal system, by the city clerk, by the city council, who were duly elected by citizens. Above all, the special interest groups overprivileged organizers wish to portray themselves as the victims. Meanwhile, Livermore workers are living out of their cars. Do not reward this dishonesty. I encourage fellow residents to vote against these candidates owned by the wannabe royalty. Instead, choose those who would represent the broad interests of Livermore. Marchand for mayor and Evan Branning and Mel Chong for city council. Thank you.
The next speaker is Joe McThorne, followed by Carl Wente. Joe McThorne, please unmute yourself.
Hello, Mayor Warner and City Council. This is Joe McThorne, President of your Livermore Pleasanton Firefighters Local 1974. I wanted to chime in and speak to you today on a positive note. Since the last several communications during the council meetings were very difficult and trying times during negotiations. As you're aware, we have received a fair contract for your firefighters in Livermore and Pleasanton. And I wanted to thank you specifically, Mayor Warner, and the council members involved to help facilitate that. Along with our new city manager, Mariana Marishiva, this relationship is has already changed, and the fresh start philosophy is moving forward as it should be. With the positive changes, the LPFD is going to be a destination department again to receive good candidates and a career fire department for all of its firefighters. Again, I want to thank Mayor Warner for his hard work on the current issues that we're seeing on the ambulance delays with Falk Ambulance Company, a for-profit ambulance provider that we're seeing delays in the Livermore area from 30 minutes to 45 minutes and an hour 15 has become the norm for this issue. Mayor Warner and the council members have been working hard to facilitate some sort of change in this. So Mayor Warner, when you retire from mayor, I hope that you truly stay on this issue and the fight to see change at the end. Again, thank you all for your service. Your firefighters truly appreciate all of you on City Council and Mayor Warner. Please contact us anytime, anything you need. Thank you.
The last speaker is Carl Wente. Please unmute yourself.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, my name is Carl Wente. I live just outside of town. My family's been here in it for 5 generations and care deeply. I want to start by thanking those elected officials, ye 5 up there, and all the others that are running in these races of the people, by the people, for the people. Only happens when people lean in and do so. So thank you to the elected officials. Had the opportunity to pass by our District 1 Supervisor, Mr. David Albert, and just reinforcing the process of government, how important it is for people that show up as you go through the consent calendar, and how many items are on that consent calendar, just the volume of government and how the sausage is made, so to speak. Also like to thank city staff. Mariana, welcome to the party. From everybody that I talked to, doing a great job, great team. The city of Livermore and the staff continue to listen. They listen to people and they care deeply about our citizenry and making this a better place. Those that keep us safe, put on bulletproof vests to go to work. We salute you. Thank you for what you do. Those who wear a badge. Public safety is key. It was hot, losing power, the rolling blackouts, all of it. But I love that. I know that there's city council. There's 5 people that care deeply about our community and continue to listen. Alan Marling, thank you for showing up, man. Your words, spot on and true. I've been showing up for 5, 6, 7 years now. And at the end of the day, Joan Sepulveda, Gene King are the group of names, are how this is rolling forward. And the stories will change. They'll repaint a picture of what it is. But may we come together. May the rational centrists come together for what's best for our town, continue to move. We can't live in this. Yes, we love affordable housing, just not here. We support solar, just not here. We have to have a functioning government that continues to move things forward. My dear son is talking in the background, also in support of our city government and what we do. So I'd just like to say thank you, thank you, thank you to everybody that shows up and does what they do. So much appreciation. And here's to unifying Livermore. Here's to making this world a better place. Cheers.
Mayor, that concludes public comment.
Okay, thank you. Before we go to the consent calendar, I did want to say thank you to Joe McThorne for his kind comments, and would like to emphasize what he pointed out is we do have an issue with the ambulance service, and I wanted to thank the firefighters for bringing it to our attention, and we are trying to work that issue, and I just hope everyone, as we make it more public what's going on, people understand and help us get that problem solved. So I wanted to thank you, Joe McThorne, for you and everyone else in the fire department for bringing it to our attention. And I think it's wonderful that we now have a good relationship between the city administration and the firefighters union. So that's all good. So thank you. Councilmember Carlin.
Yes, it was discussed about how warm it was and loss of power. What was the communication for folks regarding the cooling centers this week?
Mayor Warner, I will ask our Assistant City Manager to address this question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm Christine Martin, your Assistant City Manager, and I did want to share the response to that question. We were in communications with our community, and not only and with PG&E as well. I wanted to point that out, that they do have a liaison that contacts us through not only the city manager's office, but also with our emergency manager. So there and through the county as well. So those channels of communication are open. With respect to the cooling centers, we did put out several announcements through social media and on our websites. And we also shared our message cross collaboratively with the Livermore Valley Joint Unified School District and with the LARPD, as they were our partners in the cooling centers as well. So those messages were distributed as throughout all of our networks.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay, we're on now to close the citizens forum. We're on to the consent calendar, and they're considered routine in nature and acted upon by the city council with a single action. Members of the audience wishing to provide public input must submit a speaker card or use the raise hand feature in Zoom during the public comment period to comment on any of the consent calendar items. First start with, would any council member like to pull any items for discussion? Councilmember Carlin.
Yeah, I wanted to discuss or make a comment about a couple, but I don't have to do it now. I can do it after.
Right, yeah, that's
Thank you.
good, because when we pull them for discussion, I mean, they're voted on separately.
Right.
and
I
we
don't want to pull anything. I just want a
Good,
couple comments.
all right. At this point, I'll open public comment on the consent calendar. Does anybody wish to address us on any item on the consent calendar?
Yes, Mayor, we have one comment.
Hi, this is Carl Wente again. Just want to take this opportunity to say thank you. There's 600 and some odd number of pages in the packet, and that volume of information that you all have to go through, you all have to read to be good civic servants in what you do. It's a lot. And to the staff that has to put all of that together, that has to check it, double check it, financial administrative director, city manager has to sign each one of those, goes through just the volume of work that goes into making our government function. This democratic republic, that is, it's not a guaranteed thing for it to continue, but it continues via the good work of good people. So I just want to say thank you.
Okay. I'll bring it back now to close the public comment on the consent calendar. And would any of the council members wish to comment before we vote? Councilmember Carlin.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to emphasize that on 4.7, this is about the Rainey Planning and Management. There's a comment at the end, I think from the Pleasanton City Council, about making sure that we look at improving the bike trails. I ride that way quite often, and it is a little problematic for the bike trail. So I would encourage, as we go forward with this particular item, to make sure we address the issue of bike trails out there in Jack London, out as we go toward the outland malls. The other one I had a question about is 4.9. We talked about EBCE providing these level 3 EV chargers, which I think is wonderful. 32 different parking spaces, 16 in the surface lot and 16 in the garage. Wasn't clear to me whether that if somebody wants to charge there, is there a fee? There is a fee. I see city manager shaking your head. Okay, that wasn't clear to me anyway. maybe it was in the report, but I didn't see it. I just wanted to ensure that the public wasn't misled, that these things are, I guess, on a credit card or something like that, right? Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Because on the, I'd like to just add on 4.9. You read a lot in the news about people going with their cars trying to get a charge, and only half of the chargers are working at any point in time around the country. And I just want to mention that I had pursued this with staff. The performance criteria for these is 97% availability, which is way different than what you see in the press. So I think the other thing I would want to point out is my understanding, and staff can confirm it, that if in fact the contractor that is hired to provide this service doesn't perform, then we can look for another one. So would city manager like to just say something about that?
Yes, absolutely, Mayor Warner. Yes, that is correct. There are provisions in our license agreement with East Bay Community Energy for us to cancel that license agreement should there be non-performance for 10 or more days. And we will be tracking this very closely.
Okay, well, good. This will be a different level of performance than what you read about across the country. So expect it then.
That is absolutely correct, Mr. Mayor. And as you mentioned, 97% availability is our performance benchmark.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I would presume we'll be publicizing that as we go along. We'll measure it and make sure. Okay, then with this, does anybody like to make a motion?
Move the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Okay, no further comment. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Carling,
Aye.
Councilmember Kick,
Aye.
Councilmember Monroe,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Bonanno,
Aye.
Mayor Warner.
Aye, passes unanimously. We have no public hearings, so we're on to item 6.1, discussion and direction regarding a comprehensive general plan update, the draft land use alternatives. Can we have a staff presentation, please?
Yes, Honorable Mayor Warner and members of the City Council, item 6.1 will be presented by Andy Ross, Senior Planner. Thank you.
Thank you and good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. Tonight, we are excited to be here at this milestone of the General Plan Update Project to share with you our draft land use alternatives, get your feedback and input, and ultimately direction to proceed with our evaluation. So just quickly, we'll go over the project and work completed to date. We'll talk a little bit about the land use alternatives process and how we've developed the different suite of land use alternatives, give a brief summary on the community outreach thus far, and then walk through each one of the draft land use alternatives. And then, as I mentioned, ending with City Council feedback discussion and direction to proceed with our evaluation. So I keep saying that, you'll probably hear me say it a few more times this evening. We're not asking the council to choose any one particular alternative or preference. We're merely looking for your feedback and seeking some high-level policy direction about the land use alternatives that we've captured the right breadth and spread of land use options, and let us know if there's any items missing. And then ultimately, again, directing us to evaluate the impacts and associated trade-offs with each of the alternatives so that we can move forward with a preferred land use scenario. This is the project, the General Plan Update Project schedule as an overview. We've completed tasks 2 and 3 so far. That's the creating the vision statement and conducting existing conditions analyses. We're in task 4 of the land use alternative process. We're about midway through that task. As you can see, it will extend a little bit. We've also started initial research and analysis as part of our policy development. And as you may recall, we have prepared a draft housing element and has submitted that to the state. So 3 major tasks are currently underway as part of this work program. A quick update on the community engagement and outreach process. We continue to meet with members of the community where they are. We've met with about 1,600 members of the community since the beginning of this project. Most recently, we've met with members of the community earlier this year, and we've asked them questions about where they may like to see changes in land use over the time horizon for the general plan 2045, and also what types of land uses the project team should consider as part of that evaluation. Many of these were done in person at pop-up events, but we also had online activities on the project website, including an interactive map. Additionally, the team has met with property owners, members of the development community, and others, and we continue to meet with them to discuss their vision for their property or their projects. What we've heard coming out of the community outreach is a variety of themes. These include things like housing affordability, improved access to transit, and improved mobility in general. And in doing so, maintaining our strong local economy and also making sure we maintain our sense of community character. Also an important component of our outreach process, as you may recall, the council appointed a 19-member advisory committee representing a range of viewpoints and perspectives of the Livermore community. And their role is multifaceted. They review and discuss work plans and products from the project team and provide feedback to the project team as well as to the Planning Commission and City Council. But they also serve as liaisons to their own neighbors and community and advise us on effective outreach and engagement strategies. The committee's met a dozen times, and they've covered a wide range of topics, including key learnings about the general plan and other considerations, and they've met extensively about focus area identification and the draft land use process. This is the general plan vision statement. I'm not going to read it to you, but essentially it covers, it envisions protecting, preserving, and maintaining our quality of life here in Livermore in ways in which we do that. This is our reference point, our focal point that we look back to as part of the draft land use process. We want to make sure that each of the alternatives, or the preferred scenario rather, is achieving this vision. And we want to ask ourselves as part of our evaluation how well these alternatives or elements of that alternative is achieving this vision. And really quickly, the vision is supported by these guiding principles. So the general plan itself, as we've discussed, is made up of a series of elements or chapters. We're focused primarily right now on the top one, the land use element. And the land use element plans for and shapes the future of the physical development of Livermore. The land use element should ensure that there's a mix of land uses and provide a variety of services, job and housing opportunities, and also consider agriculture and surrounding open spaces. The land use element is comprised of goals and policies, land use designations that are described in detail, and a map. And that's where we'll focus this evening. This is a copy of the general plan land use map. There are a lot of colors, and each of the colors represents a different land use designation. And what the map is telling us, and what these different colors are telling us, is what can be built, where uses can be built, and at what intensity and density these things can be built. And so a lot of the areas within our community is fairly well planned, and we don't expect many changes. And so as part of the exercise for the land use alternative process, we're focusing on certain geographical areas that we would anticipate change, or that the community has expressed that they desire change. And we'll look at those focus areas, as we call them, and explore a range of possible futures that help us accommodate things, as we mentioned before: jobs, housing, services, parks and open space, etc. And ultimately, each one of these alternatives will be refined into a preferred scenario, and that preferred scenario will be integrated into this general plan land use map as an updated map for the general plan. So the draft land use alternatives which I will get to in a moment, is comprised of a few components. We have the draft alternatives maps of each of the alternatives, and we'll go through them one by one. They're meant to provide a big picture look at the future outcomes. But we have created a place types menu to simplify some of the land use designation discussion. As shown by the map, we have dozens upon dozens of land use designations in our current general plan, all of various detail. And ultimately, we'll need to refine these place types into a land use designation that makes sense. And so we'll either use existing land use designations, we'll modify some of the land use designations based on this process, or we may even come up with entirely new land use designations. And then finally, the third component is what we call a build out table. It provides a range of outcomes, essentially translating the place types on the map into a scale by which we can compare the outcomes of the different alternatives. It assumes, it looks out to 2045, so that's a 20-year time horizon of what we could expect in 2045. And it assumes that every parcel turns over or redevelops, which we know is an unlikely scenario, but it's a gross assumption for the purpose of a starting point. And when I say gross calculations, we also mean that we're just looking at units per acre and floor area per acre, those types of evaluations. So again, it's fairly gross, but we do consider industry factors that would account for things like streets or landscape areas or utilities. So here is a map of our focus areas, just to orient us really quick. This is I-580 here. Your downtown is here. And this is Tesla Road in South Livermore, and then Greenville Road on the east. So each of these colored polygons represents a focus area. And then these little icons represent a rail station, and the circle around it represents a half-mile walk shed or radius. One other point I wanted to make of note here is that these focus areas don't necessarily represent all the possible changes we might see in the general plan land use map. So these are ones that are comprehensive and complex that will need further study, but there may be smaller scaled land use changes, either proposed by the property owner or noted as part of the project team's evaluation of the overall map. They're just, again, smaller in scale, single properties, and don't rise to the level of evaluation. They will be studied as part of an overall comprehensive look at the land use map as part of our environmental impact report. And you'll see some of those a little later in the process. So we'll start going through each of the focus areas. This is Laughlin Road focus area. It's in the northeastern part of the city. This is I-580 right here, and this is Laughlin Road, and then we have Scenic Avenue. As you can see by the aerial on the left side of the screen, it's mostly undeveloped. It's all within the urban growth boundary, but a portion of it is actually outside of the city limits. It's comprised of special species habitats. There's some biological resources in the area, and there's known fault lines. And if we look to the right side of the screen, you can see a variety of different urban land use designations. And that's because this was originally intended to be a transit-oriented development that would serve a future BART station. And now currently the BART has said they are not going to extend service eastward. And we have a new proposed rail system called Valley Link, and they're proposing stations at the Isabel neighborhood and the South Front area. So because of that, these urban land use designations at this location may not be appropriated or needed. And so we've created the intent of this focus area, or the vision is to preserve this open space, but also facilitate new and compatible residential and commercial development and uses in the area. And we have 3 different alternatives that are varied slightly to achieve that goal. So the first one is the residential alternative. Again, I-580 is here, and Laughlin Road and Scenic Avenue. So just south of Scenic Avenue is a lower density place type. which transitions to a higher density place type. And then east of Laughlin Road is the general industrial place type. And then we have in these little teardrop parcels adjacent to 580, a highway commercial place type, and the remainder remains open space. In the second alternative, the neighborhood center alternative, again, we have a low density residential place type transitioning into a medium density place type, and then a neighborhood commercial place type along North Front, and then extending east of Laughlin Road. The highway commercial place types are in the same location as is the open space place type. And then lastly, we have more of a highway oriented alternative where we expand these highway commercial place types all the way to Laughlin Road. We extend a general industrial place type along North Front Road, a high density place type adjacent to that, and a medium residential place type near Scenic Avenue with some open space place types integrated through that area. And then next we'll move on to the South Front Basco focus area. This is also the priority development area in the regional planning documents. It's 630 acres, so it's a large focus area. And just to orient us really quick, I-580 is here. This is First Street. We have Vasco Road and the Breesa neighborhood, an existing A station. And then again, Valley Link is proposed in this general area along South Front Road, approximately midway between First Street and Vasco. So you can see this is predominantly made up of a variety of different industrial land uses and storage areas. There's some vacant areas, but it also does have service commercial, some neighborhood commercial, and some residential areas sprinkled throughout. And that's reflected in the land use designations shown on the right side of the screen. So the vision or the intent of this focus area is to create a transit-oriented complete neighborhood with a mix of housing, jobs, and services. Again, each one of these alternatives achieves that a vision or the intent of that area, just does so with different proportions of different land use place types. This is, again, a large area, and so it's likely that something of this size and complexity would be implemented through a specific plan, where we could address more fine-grained issues such as connectivity and walkability, access to transit and services. But the general plan framework sets the parameters for those future discussions and a structure by which to build the specific plan off of. So the first alternative for this focus area is the business center alternative. It's more of a employment focused with some high density place types near the South Front station area, as well as the ACE station area here. And the most of the remaining area is left as general industrial or industrial office to support job generating uses. The second alternative for this area is a residential neighborhood alternative. It includes a more variety of housing place types, high density near the transit areas, and then some mix of medium, high, and medium. It also introduces some mixed use place types within this focus area, and then some new neighborhood commercial and non-residential place types along Vasco Road and buffering from I-580. And then lastly, for this focus area is the blended alternative, where we have more equal mix or proportions of both the non-residential job generating uses and the residential uses. So to the west, we have more of a housing and residential focused. It's buffered with a mixed use and green buffer to the east, and then everything to the east is more of general industrial place type. But this alternative does include a new place type that we have not yet talked about, and that's the mixed industrial, mixed commercial, shown here in these hatch marks. The intent there is to be makerspace, where one could make, produce, or assemble a product on site and sell that same product on site. A good example of this are things like breweries or wineries, but it could be coffee roasters or furniture makers or things of that nature. So the third focus area is the Las Positas focus area. It's about 75 acres. It's mostly open space adjacent to I-580 and west of Livermore Avenue. And then this is Los Positas Court right here where it gets its name. It's mostly highway serving or regional retail and some low intensity, low lying industrial buildings. And you can see again on the right side of this slide that that's reflected in the land use designations. We have 3 different alternatives. As with the others, the intent here, based on conversations with our general plan advisory committees, to revitalize some of the underutilized industrial office spaces, help facilitate residential uses, and improve connectivity to some of these existing businesses and services for the existing neighborhoods to the south and to the west. And also to create a strong entryway into Livermore along Livermore Avenue. So the first alternative is the open space alternative. This maintains pretty much everything as it is, open space along I-580 and this mixed industrial designation, which could support the uses that are there today, but does change the business commercial park designation to a low density place type and some open space along the hillside. The next alternative is a mixed use alternative. Again, everything stays almost the same, except that this is the open space adjacent to 580 is now an agricultural designation, which could help support some of that entryway feel. And the areas to the south of Los Positas Court are a medium density residential and a neighborhood commercial designation at the corner of Los Positas and Livermore to round out the 4 corners of commercial activity. And then finally, this is the most intense of the alternatives. It's an industrial alternative where we have non-residential, non-open space uses adjacent to I-580. We maintain the open space corridor along the Arroyo. And then south of Los Positas, we have a medium high density place type, and we maintain a small pocket of the mixed industrial place type. I'll say that of note, this area is challenging. There's currently no access to this side of the Arroyo, so that's a feasibility issue that we'd have to study to see if that would hinder development. We also know that there's biological species in this area, which could potentially impact development in that area. And then lastly, some of this property has been offered to the city as part of a nearby or adjacent development project. That's not to say that we couldn't change the designation, but because there's agreements in place, we'd have to amend those agreements that established it as open space. Lastly, we have the East Avenue, South Vasco Road focus area. This area is about 40 acres. It's south of East Avenue shown here and to the west of Vasco Road here. You can see from the aerial that it's mostly low-lying industrial and commercial service uses. And that's supported by the pink designation on the right side of the screen. To the east of Vasco Road are these rural residential properties, and they have a designation of agriculture and viticulture. This area, as some may be aware of, started to transition a little bit in recent years. It has some winery uses and some brewery uses that have started to come in, and some supportive entertainment and production type uses. And so this new dynamic creates an opportunity to build or capitalize upon that. And so the vision for this area is to create a visitor destination that could support production or production spaces and maker spaces, but also serve and enhance that gateway along Vasco Road corridor into South Livermore Valley wine country. So all 3 of the draft alternatives explore different variations on how to achieve that vision. But again, it's intended to be a maker village that would accommodate the sale and cultivation of these uses and products. At this scale, though, we would need to study things further, such as parking and circulation. If we're creating a destination, that's a consideration. And also, because it spans both sides of Vasco Road, looking at comfortable and safe crossings of Vasco Road as we generate activity in the area. And that is a concern that has already started to be raised as this the area has started to transition, but the new land use designations and investment into this area may be an opportunity to address some of those concerns. So the first alternative is what we call a maker village alternative. We have mostly medium high density place types along the west and southern portions of Research Drive. We have a central green, and then we have that mixed commercial, mixed industrial place type here, or maker space. And then on the eastern side of Vasco Road, we have more traditional wine country commercial. For this production alternative, we've almost split it down the middle, where we have half of the focus area as that maker space or mixed industrial commercial, and the other half is the wine country commercial flanking both sides of Vasco. And then we've moved the green to the eastern side of Vasco Road. And then lastly, we have the wine country center alternative, where we have a medium density residential place type just south of East Avenue. We have a central green or park, and then the remainder is traditional wine country commercial place type. So that wraps up a brief description of each of the focus areas and each of the alternatives. Just really quickly to put this in context, we are in task 4, that's the land use alternative process. We've identified these focus areas and we've developed a range of alternatives. We're seeking council confirmation tonight that this is the right range and breadth of the alternatives. And then moving forward, we'll evaluate each of the alternatives and then begin to compare them against each other. And so that evaluation will consider a range of topics as listed on the screen, things ranging from climate change and public safety, student generation and school capacity, infrastructure and services, and the like. And so, again, staff is recommending that council provide some policy direction on whether these draft land use alternatives that we're proposing for further assessment represent the sufficient and diverse range of possible development patterns. And then if so, direct staff to continue with our evaluation and return with the results of the analysis. That concludes staff's presentation. I would like to invite Vice Chair Troop Mossy from your General Plan Advisory Committee. He had a few remarks to make about this process and the role of the committee. And then following that, staff, the rest of the project team, and Carrie Stone from PlaceWorks is available for any questions that you may have.
Plan Advisory Committee today. So the General Plan Advisory Committee, or GPAC, is comprised of 19 members representing Livermore community in developing the Livermore 2020 or 45 general plan. The GPAC's role is to ensure continuous and balanced representation and provide feedback that conveys the community's perspective and local knowledge. Our committee, as mentioned in the slides, has met a dozen times, 12 times since October. GPAC meetings have included work sessions to generate input for the vision statement, draft housing elements, and land use alternatives thus far. Throughout the process, the city has also provided educational sessions to provide relevant context and economic market conditions, sustainable efforts, transportation planning, and other topics, as we are, it's a once in a 17, 18-year committee that gets put together. So we are avid learners and happy to do so. We've held 4 meetings to provide input to the land use alternatives between February and March of this year. We've met 3 times to discuss the proposed focus areas. Our feedback resulted in the refined set of focus areas the council is considering tonight. In June, our committee held meetings broken into 2 sessions to review and provide feedback on the draft land use alternatives. GPAC comments included concerns about development in proximity to I-580, desire to understand the trade-offs of displacing existing businesses within focus areas if new land uses are considered. Communally, we believe that all focus areas should include new parks or other green spaces to further preserve and promote open space in Livermore Valley, along with continued work with our wine country in South Livermore to further promote our hospitality sector and regional maturity. Kind of lastly, considerations were also made for expanding the range of potential future residential densities to add more medium low and medium residential to some alternatives. So We look forward to the results of the project team's analysis and look forward to continuing our discussion of land use options as a part of our work with the GPAC and the general plan. Lastly, I would just like to thank our chair, Stephanie Sheng, who couldn't be here to speak on this matter on behalf of us and our entire committee and our city representatives for the many long nights and as we push forward on our general plan. It has been my unique pleasure to serve as vice chair of this committee, and I look forward to continuing to challenge the city and one another with meaningful progress. Livermore, you are well represented by this group. That concludes my comments. Thank you.
That concludes our presentation, Mayor and Council. We're available for any questions you may have.
Okay, at this point, I'll open up for public comment. Do we have anybody who wishes to speak to us?
Yes, Mayor, there are 4 requests to speak. The first is from Alan Burnham, followed by David B. Kent and Alan Marling. Alan Burnham, please unmute yourself.
Honorable Mayor and City Council members, I've been privileged to serve on the GPAC committee, and I think that what has been presented here generally is a good reflection of our discussions, giving a range of options. Obviously, just as in the downtown, none of these concepts are what you would say are the perfect concept, but they have all the elements from which you can consider the various things to come up with that. And I say that is generally the case because there's one exception, which I think is actually ill-conceived. It is the Las Positas Court. I have 2 concerns about that. One of my concerns is that it's not obvious that the commercial development on the south side of Las Positas Court needs to be turned into housing. There may well be other land that can provide enough housing, certainly for the next foreseeable future. On the other hand, there is a concern in the business community that there may be running out of commercial space. And I think that it's ill-conceived to consider converting this commercial space without considering the overall balance of land available for housing and for businesses. Second of all, as an example of this, there's 10 auto service businesses downtown. Some people have said they don't need to be there, or maybe not, shouldn't even be there. Okay, well, that's fine, except for where are they going to move? If you take out all these other commercial places, then essentially you're going to have everybody driving to Tracy to have their auto service. This makes no sense. There's one other thing which I have asked staff about but have not received any reply, is that the population for the neighborhood center alternative and the highway oriented center make no sense. It says that there actually would be less people for the medium high density housing than the medium housing density. And I wish I had been given an answer to this, but I think it's something that the staff needs to be queried about. Thank you for your attention.
Next speaker is David B. Kent, followed by Alan Marling and Matt Weber. David B. Kent, please unmute yourself.
Good evening. I'd like to thank Andy Ross and his project team for doing really an exemplary job with the General Plan Advisory Committee. I am a committee member along with Alan, and I think the choices put before the council tonight really reflect a good diversity. There are many things to admire in the work. I think it addresses some critical needs, such as continued open space preservation, habitat conservation. Of course, the main project would be the South Front Valley Link Station, where I think there's an amazing opportunity to build, a transit-oriented community and achieve substantial amounts of affordable housing and transit-oriented housing with good connectivity, for the city. I'm also particularly interested in the East Avenue Vasco project. Full disclosure, my family has a business there, Almost Famous Wine Company. That location, I think, has the promise to achieve many of the city's goals, some of which have been around for 25 years. It is an ideal location for a wine country retail center, something like an Oakville grocery with adequate parking and trolley connections and electric bike rentals, many kind of retail commercial businesses that would be best located on the edge of the rural wine country, but be immediately across the street from what is becoming an emerging urban wine country with craft breweries, distilleries, wineries, as Andy said, some emerging entertainment options. I think this is a great opportunity. That business park is very much in transition. Much of it is vacant. It's almost entirely underutilized. It would also create, I think, a great opportunity for medium and higher density housing that would be highly bikeable and walkable to the national labs and to the technology businesses that exist between Vasco and Greenville Road. So many good things on the table that will make Livermore an even better place. And I do share Alan's concern, the previous speaker, that as we take advantage of these sites for open space and housing, that we also maintain our inventory of light industrial and technology parks. So I think that will be the challenge going forward. Thank you.
Next speaker is Alan Marling, followed by Matt Weber. Alan Marling, please unmute yourself.
Mayor and council members, last week was terrifying. Temperatures sizzled past 110 degrees, and the heat made my father delirious. Our air conditioner broke, as did many in the city, and we all had to fear PG&E switching off our power when we needed it most. I felt awful, both from the scorching air and over concerns of our future. The climate crisis threatens the life, liberty, and happiness of our Livermore residents. Our general plan should acknowledge this danger by prioritizing land use to protect us from rising temperatures. Asphalt parking lots should be covered by solar panels. Native plants should provide shade, and we should have the option to build more solar farms similar to the one behind the library. I take pride in the windmills crowning our hills, and Livermore should continue our tradition of being a city exemplifying science and clean energy. We should promote green tourism and consider microgrids and locally sourced energy so our citizens don't have to rely on the criminally corrupt PG&E. Rather than only reacting to the climate crisis, Livermore should get ahead of it and take the lead in becoming a city of the future. Prosperous, safe, and cool. Thank you.
Last request to speak is from Matt Weber. Please unmute yourself.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight on the Imagine Livermore 2045 General Plan Update. And thanks much to staff. My name is Matt Weber. I'm the Vice President of Development of Ellis Partners. We're a longtime owner of industrial property, in fact, since 1996, having developed several properties, including Livermore Gateway West. And we currently own 261 South Vasco, which is in the South Front Vasco PDA. As shown in the alternate maps, all designations are shown as general industrial, which we do support because we have existing industrial uses. But we think it's a missed opportunity as we look forward to the 20 so years that this plan will be in place. As we all know, there's a severe housing shortage, both in the city and in the region. And our site is adjacent to sites to the south that are labeled as housing opportunity sites, as well as catty corner to the Brisa neighborhood. And for this reason, we think that there's a great opportunity to label our property there at 261 South Vasco as a high density residential overlay. This would effectively honor the existing uses allow them to continue to be in place while they would like to be in place, but also creates the opportunity for much needed housing in the future as the neighborhood and the region evolves over time. So thank you very much for the effort of the committee, as well as council and the mayor. And we look forward to future work on this project. Thank you.
The next speaker is Carl Wente. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, Carl Wente, 5565 Tesla Road, just outside of town. I just want to again say thank you to those who are stepping up and serving in this capacity. Per the California State Constitution, cities are required to update their general plan every 25-ish years. And it is a slow process at times, but a very critically important process. And I think if you look at the quality, I know from my standpoint, you look at the quality of the individuals that we have on this general plan update committee. I think it is a testament to the breadth, the diversity, the intellectual capital, the just general awesomeness of the city of Livermore. So thank you, Alan Burnham. Thank you, David Kent. Thank you, Jeremy Troop Massey, Vice Chair, for stepping up and serving in the way that you are. Definitely my generation, I'll say our generation when I'm putting myself up with Jeremy, our generation cares about transportation-based housing very deeply. And then so with that South Front and where Valley Link is coming in, connect to the Union Pacific lines, the ACE trains, whether you're going south towards San Jose, or you're going west to San Francisco, you're going east to Stockton, like having that all connect, and it's connecting right in our backyard. So very critically important. And then also the East Avenue, the Vasco area there. The wine country needs some of this critical infrastructure that Mr. Kent talked about, and that Mr. Troop Massey talked about as well, of some of those things to help our wine country, which is fundamentally hurting at this juncture. Obviously, I have a vested interest. My family has a vested interest in a successful wine country. There's no secrets there. But high tide raises all ships, and that is a great location where you already have a bunch of wineries out there, a bunch of breweries, Sidewinder, making good cocktails. There's a really cool culture out there that I think we should nourish and treasure as we move forward. Again, I just want to say thank you, Andy Ross, leading that charge. Ain't easy. The Placeworks crew, not an easy task that y'all are moving through, but appreciation. People are watching, and our generation cares deeply about this stuff. Even though most of us don't show up because home raising kids doing what they do. I have my kid downstairs with a friend, so I can come up and make this call and say thank you all to what you do. Take care.
Mayor, there are no more requests to speak.
Okay, I'll close the public comment, bring it back to the council. I see Councilmember Kick.
Okay, bear with me. I have lots of things. I will second what Mr. Wente said about our generation caring about this, but we often don't show up. I'm lucky to have a partner to take my kids while I'm here. So I have some general, like overarching comments and then a couple specific, but I could leave those specific out. I'll get you'll see. So I have a couple notes. Specifically, if we know that a proposed alternative is likely to be more problematic than it is beneficial, for example, where it might be extremely difficult to build commercial because there's just not appropriate land that's graded properly, I would just suggest maybe spending less time on the things that are more like a wish than an actual opportunity. In addition, I would say where we can, I would love to make sure that every single option has housing in it somewhere. I think there's just one where there's no housing at all, and I think that would be a missed opportunity. I believe that's in on the east. Yeah, it's the production alternative on East Avenue, South Vasco. I just think that's a huge missed opportunity over there, especially as it is becoming a very cool place to hang out. And then I have a couple questions about light industrial. I hear the concerns from the committee members about losing all light industrial. But I would love if when this came back to us again, we could get more details on what the projections are for work from home in all sectors, not just, not just tech, but what that's looking like. And then what are the designations that would qualify for something like a co-working space, as a lot of people are now allowed to work at home, but might like to get away for a second, away from their loud children. And then, let's see, I took my notes very not cleanly here. Two recent laws, AB 2097, which I did bring up with staff already, has some different parking requirements in transit areas. So if we could make sure when this comes back to us that we're looking at how we're complying with AB 2097, because it might increase some of those housing numbers for us. And then AB 2011 would give some ministerial approval for underutilized commercial. So if we keep something commercial, to give us those numbers of, yes, we kept it commercial. However, we know under AB 2011, X number of housing units could be ministerial. I think that would be really good information for us to have as we move forward. And I think I'm done blabbing at you. I really appreciate all the work you've done on this. And I have heard nothing but positive feedback from your committee members. So I appreciate all the work you're doing to make sure they all feel involved. As one committee member calls it, the big feelings meeting, which makes me know that it is a safe place for them to really express their passion for our community. So thank you for that.
Councilmember Carling.
Yes, thank you. I, just to clarify, I wanted to follow Councilmember Kick's points early in her discussion, and that is, it's possible to suggest that you don't need to do all 12. Isn't that's true, right?
That is true.
So if we decided to eliminate a couple, that would help in terms of focusing your efforts, right? Okay, so I did hear that the Las Positas Court Industrial Alternative had problems with access and you were concerned about biospecies. I would posit that that one's probably a non-starter, at least from my point of view. I can't imagine trying to turn some of that open space now that we have there into industrial. I appreciate the comments about making sure we continue to provide space for industrial development and job creation, but I just can't imagine trying to turn that into any industrial access there. So my humble suggestion would be to not bother looking at that one. The other one that I think I would.
Excuse me, just a second. What you're, just to make sure I understand, north of the creek, you're saying don't bother putting anything there.
Right. The
But so
Las
that's not, I mean,
Yes, industrial alternative.
sure, but okay, right, okay. It, not necessarily the industrial alternative. I'm just trying to make a distinction between not building north of the creek versus a particular alternative. That's all.
It's the only alternative with a building, an
Oh.
industry building there. Okay,
Well, there's other stuff going on the others too, but okay, I got it.
but it's either open space or agriculture.
Even the agriculture is what I'm talking about. Okay.
Oh, well, I didn't distinguish that. I made the distinction about building commercial.
Right.
The other one that I personally don't find particularly interesting is the East Avenue South Fast Food Production alternative. There's no housing, as pointed out by Councilmember Kick. I also think that the open space is okay, but it really doesn't, I mean, there is housing nearby, but not surrounding it. So I don't think that production alternative is particularly compelling, at least to me. The other question I had is we got a couple of letters today in part of our packet. And one I'm particularly interested in is the one from Livermore Venture Partners. I assume you guys read that one, right? So they say that they suggest that our plan will be directed by HCD because we don't have some units up by Las Positas College. So can somebody speak to that?
Sure, we've been in contact with that group for a couple of years, actually, on their intent or their plan to look at housing up near the college. And we've indicated we're open to looking at that through the general plan update process. But we have proven to the State Housing Community Development Department that we do have adequate resources within our urban growth boundary to meet our current RENA cycle. And we're fairly confident we can do that in our next one. But the analysis that the team will undertake going forward from here will look at that. So we'll continue to be in contact with this group, and we'll continue to look at their intentions for their property.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all I have at the moment. Thank you.
Yeah, Councilmember Monroe.
All right, so I too have a number of comments. I wanted to start with what you've heard from the community, which is to maintain a small town feel, add a variety of affordable housing, look at vacant infill sites as places to accommodate future growth, then economy and transit. So all makes a lot of sense. Also could be contradictory. And so in the sense that if we want to maintain a small town feel, that's difficult to do when we are building lots of houses. If we want to do a lot of infill, that says something about how high we get to build, because that means we're not building out. All of which isn't to say that there's a problem with anything that you've presented. I mean, I have opinions about that, but just that and this is what I take very seriously is how to think about where how the community feels about this. Feeling and constraints aren't necessarily the same thing. And so one of the things I'd like to make sure we do is think very carefully about, Livermore prides itself on having a small town feel despite the fact that we are 88,000 people. And we're going to be, I think, growing by close to 50%. So at each step of the way, what I'm hoping is that we can provide chances for connection to the community as a whole and small neighborhood connections within. So that's just sort of the overall feeling. I think you're doing that. I just want to say it out loud. Because I think it's important to keep in mind at every step of the way. With that, I have a couple questions about each of the presentations. Looking at the Laughlin Road one, I'm torn here as I consider where it is with regard to the city and what it's for in some sense. What does this say about what we're going to look like in 20 years? And one of the things that we have heard repeatedly from those people north of the freeway, whether we call them Springtown or North Livermore, is there's not enough of a center. So I guess one question I have is, does this offer that opportunity? Is it central enough within that community? How do we think about that? It's also highway or, so I guess that would be the one question I have that's not obvious from this is just that location is northwest. How do we, which of these opportunities, and I don't know, the question I want considered is, how does this best utilize that North Livermore area to make it feel like it both belongs and has its own, is taken care of? So no opinion on which way to go forward on that. With regard to, I really don't have a comment on the south front. I think that's covered. I think I've mentioned to you before, my concern with the Las Positas court focus area is that that is by a creek. And with, it's fine during drought, but what we're predicted to get is ongoing, flooding, followed by drought, followed by flooding. Whatever happens there, I want to have things that are not going to be affected by flooding. And I want that area kept so that we take that into account. I mean, to me, what that says is it's something along the lines of the mixed use with agriculture, but that's not, I'm not trying not to voice my too much of opinion. I'm just saying that my real concern there is to address the flooding that we know will come. Just because, as Alan Marling said, climate change. Finally, with the East Street and South Vasco Road, again, reality that yes, it's changing. Reality is it's still going to continue to be a commute road. As we are considering our streets and our transportation, we are trying to take into account how we build community across and around streets, but we also need to make sure we do leave some commute areas. So with that, I actually have a very strong opinion about, and I share my opinion with I share Councilmember Carling's opinion about the production alternative. I think it's a non-starter. Just it does not actually address. It doesn't take that into account. The park, and specifically the park there. This mixed use, the direction it's already going. So I am voicing my opinion. The Maker Village alternative seems to me the correct direction to go, with taking into account the fact that Vasco Road is Vasco Road. So I think that concludes my, actually the one other thing I'll say is that I really want to take, I'm assuming that this is a different stage of the process, but I really appreciate Alan Marling's comments about making sure that we are taking climate change into account. So that's it. Thank you. Thank you all.
Vice Mayor Bonanno.
Yeah, thank you. Let's see. So I'm going to try to stick to the question maybe a little higher level that we were asked about tonight, which is, are these generally the range and breadth of alternatives that we should be considering? So I think at a high level, yes, although I appreciate the comments that have been made, particularly about Las Positas court option alternative. We should be very careful if there are, and I would also go to the committee who studied this a lot more than we have at this point. If they didn't want those alternatives scratched, or they didn't make strong recommendations that we didn't listen to, then maybe there's good reasons to keep them in. But I'd be open to that. But I'm not gonna make that suggestion too strongly tonight. But I do think where the rubber really meets the road on these, while I think they generally meet the range and breadth of what we've been asked to consider, when you get to step 3, where you consider things like climate change and resilience, public safety from floodings and fire, housing supply, commercial land use supply, infrastructure capacity, school capacity. That's where the work is really going to come on. We're going to see pretty quickly, I believe, whether some of these are at all viable. So hopefully we think there's some chance they're viable, or we shouldn't be considering them, but that's really where we're going to understand whether these are good alternatives or not. So I probably won't be on the council when we come back with that data, but I'll be looking forward to it from the other side of the podium, because I think it's really where we're going to understand the viability of these alternatives. To that, I'd also just add one maybe more specific question, is that some of these we're looking at these alternatives and we're saying, for example, on the South Vasco plan, that one of them looks to increase makerspace. Well, have we talked with people in that community to say, are they interested in increased either new uses or expanded uses? You know, we see seeds of things that are happening there, which all are pretty cool, I think, but you know, how are we knowing that an expansion, if we adopt a plan that shows an expanded use, that it's, you know, it's the business community in that area has the appetite for it? I think it's really important that we aren't kidding ourselves. We're going to create all these new business spaces in particular. I mean, if we build the homes, in all likelihood, we will get the home count, we'll get the population as a result of that. The jobs and the business appetite for these new uses is a question I think it's harder to answer, but one that I think is really going to be essential for us to explore further before we can really put the final approval on this plan. You know, in the report, early in the report, we talked about the ABAG and MTC projections, which said our population is projected to grow by 32% and jobs only by 7%, which I thought was kind of a strange ratio. But how does ABAG and MTC, not knowing where our new general plan is going to land us, how do they know what our projections are? So I think those are interesting numbers, but I'm more interested in the job projections and where we get data that support the job projections, which I'm not going to ask you to answer it here, but we are putting down numbers for each of these plans for the jobs that we're projecting. You know, let's make sure we're not just, you know, filling in cells on a spreadsheet, and that we have done our due diligence with the communities that are going to actually have to, you know, say, yes, I want to do that business here, or I want to build that new makerspace. So that's really, you know, generally, I think, as I said, the next step is the most important one, and will really reveal the viability of these options. I think you're on the right track. I think the committee just looks to be doing a great job. I really appreciate also the comments Mr. Massey made about the things that were suggested by the committee. And I'm going to assume that they've been well incorporated here, because the things they said, not to put my own opinion on this, I resonated with the things that I heard the committee was asking to be assured that they were in these alternatives. Things like make sure we preserve open space, make sure we build enough housing that's not all super expensive housing, low and medium income housing, I think is, you know, the points I heard him list, I really thought were important. So I hope and encourage you to make sure those are incorporated. So I'm just going to leave it there and thank everybody for their work. This is a huge effort. I'm going to miss the fact that I won't be here when it's all done, but I'm sure it'll come out well, because you have great committee and great staff, and the community is obviously paying attention. So I'll leave it there and turn it back to the mayor.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to say I much appreciate you putting this on the agenda. I wanted this council to have the opportunity to weigh in. And so I think you're hearing from us. So I really appreciate that. A couple other, I want to say thank you. And it was just mentioned by Vice Mayor. You've mentioned a vision for an area, say East and Vasco. And I think articulating what is trying to be accomplished in each area and making sure that the community around there and the owners and everything else agree with that vision. So we have alternatives with different components, but we don't always have what are we trying to do? I mean, in a little bit more description of what it is. We have the, you know, the vision statement for the overall, and I think being real clear on what the vision is for a particular area is important. And then you have a chance then to also blend into that statement how it matches the climate action goals, et cetera. So I would just add some words there so that people can more emotionally connect with what's trying to be accomplished. So that's one thing. The other thing I would say is when I looked at these alternatives, they did have a lot of elements. And so I didn't look at a particular alternative and say, I'm going to just eliminate that alternative. I looked at it more of the elements. So in that earlier conversation about Las Positas Court, the key there is that it's north of the creek is highly problematic. So don't try and mess with that. And I wouldn't even mess with it with some kind of agriculture, because where are you going to get the water? Maybe from the flood in the creek, I guess. But the other point, though, that I want to bring out is that in the industrial alternative, it has a different density housing element. So I wouldn't, if you, by saying I'm not going to do the industrial alternative, I take that to mean don't mess north of the creek, but do consider a variation in the density of the housing. So that's why I'm trying to draw that distinction. And I think that's true in some of the other alternatives as well. Now, I would like to, it's not second, third, or fourth, whatever it is, the concern about the light industrial. And if we look at what we're trying to do downtown, we have some light industrial, car repair shops, et cetera, that really don't belong there anymore. When it was a highway, they did, but not now, really. Well, where do they go? And if we start taking out the light industrial, then where do even those places go? So I think before this is done, that element has to be, we have to be eyes wide open. Where are they going? We can't just take out one area and say, well, we'll figure it out later. So I do think that's the case. Another thing that just got in my mind is you were talking about the people that want to put housing up at the college. Now, I have asked for a meeting with the college and others to talk about the housing for the students. So I think, all options ought to be on the table for what we want to do there. And so that's something to think about. So that's, I don't know if it's a focus area or something, but making sure we have the student housing figured out, because that's a major element for the future of the college. So I think that deserves explicit discussion. The other thing would say is that, going back now to the visions, I'm not sure about Laughlin Road. And I know in particular that the people in that area aren't overly happy about necessarily some of the options that we've got now. But I would say that that's one area that I think is problematic and that will take a lot of community input. The South Front, I think, as was stated, is the major opportunity if we get the Valley Link station. And my own looking at the thing, some kind of blended opportunity is what makes most sense. Again, thinking about what the right elements are and where they go. We already talked about Las Positas Court, so I wouldn't do anything north of the creek, but I do think we need to think about, is that an area where we would want to go to the higher density on the housing if we were to take out some of the stuff? And East Avenue and South Vasco Road, the thing that really strikes me is you want it to be an inviting place. And right now, it just looks kind of haphazard, especially with the way the cars are parking on Vasco. Makes me nervous when I drive down the road because I don't know what's going to come out. So I think that's needs to be clearly fixed. And I think you could probably do it sooner rather than later, because I don't know, it's possibly changing the amount of land where people are parking. Do they have parking there in front of those businesses at all? Is that necessary? So I would just urge some drawing on that sooner, because it'll take longer to do the whole, but that's an issue of comfort as well as invitingness as a major thing. So I'd like to see that addressed. What we heard, one of the property owners around, the land near Brisa made a request for the upzoning. But one of the questions that I wanted to ask tonight, even before that comment was made, is that, we have a housing problem in the Bay Area, and we in Livermore are not going to fix it for the Bay Area. Now, to the extent that we upzone land that was prior at one lower density, or was it industrial and it wasn't for housing at all, my question is there a way to create an opportunity to upzone a property for, to residential or more, if the property owner is willing to provide a preference for those who are employed in Livermore. You know, we've done this with the workforce housing, we've got that. But now what I'm saying is we should think about this, because if we just add more housing, we haven't solved Livermore's problem. We've just, right? So I'm thinking that there might be a way to do this. And it would be, you know, something similar to the transfer development credit program. So I would ask that some serious thinking be done about that, and that be incorporated in this, because frankly, you know, upzoning a property is a major benefit to a lot of people. But let's see if we can properly capture that benefit for Livermore community, you know, to the possible. So there's, I don't know if anybody wants to respond to that at this time, but you get the idea. And perhaps, because I know the general plan committee is doing its work, is it possible, I guess here's the question. When could you come back with an answer as to whether what I just said is feasible, and some of the broad outlines of how it might be done?
So right now we're in the land use alternatives evaluation stage, or will be after this evening. And then the other phase of this project is policy development. And these types of mechanisms seem to fall under that discussion. So again, the land use element is the map, the land use designations, but also our goals and policies on how we achieve those things. And so I think we could start looking at that as part of this evaluation process, and then transition into a broader policy discussion. And
Yeah,
then, Mr. Stewart. I don't
Yeah,
know if you wanna add.
what I'm looking for is an answer that says, before I'm out of here,
Ah.
I'll have some sense
Mr.
that
Stewart.
you're on this.
Sure. And just like you mentioned, the transferable development credits program, that was a component of our last general plan update. We can look at programs quickly to gauge what's out there and report back to you.
So 2 months, November, you might have some broad outline.
Well, yes, we can do some initial homework and report back before November on the results of our homework and the opportunities to look at programs like that.
Okay, thank you. So I think, pardon? Oh, go ahead. Was I done?
You said, I think, and that's usually what you say before you move on.
Go ahead.
Um,
I wasn't sure.
Yes. So a couple people asked about if business owners had an appetite for that change. And I just wanted to clarify, I believe that Brandon Cardwell has said this was kind of a business owner brought idea, like that they were interested in doing this, and that's why we're considering that. Is that correct?
Specifically the East and Vasco focus
Yes.
area? Yes, that is correct.
So yes, businesses do have an appetite. This wasn't something we just came up with. It's because business owners are interested in doing something like this.
Business owners have expressed expanding upon what they're currently doing now. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. And then last question is job projections. Can you let us know, and you don't have to know the answer now, when someone works from home, is that job projection for the city that they live in, or is it the city that their whatever is located in? So I work from home, but does Salesforce get that job projection in San Francisco, or do we get it here in Livermore? And so I know it's difficult as people move around a lot, but if we can have some idea about what that actually looks like before we make other policy decisions, that would be helpful. Okay, now I think I'm done.
Oh, good. Anyone else have anything?
Yeah, I wanted to support your comment on providing incentives for the upzoning for jobs in Livermore. And I wanted to broaden that to, what's the goal? And so the goal is to ensure that we have local jobs. And that, I mean, basically, we have a problem with some cities believing that their job is to have the jobs, or their role is to have the jobs, and other cities' role is to provide the housing. And that's a difficult thing to fight as long as cities are individuals. And so what I think is really very clever about what you suggested is that we are addressing that in one particular way. I guess what I'm wondering, so what I'd like to do is broaden what the mayor said and say, let's look at the goal itself and beyond upzoning. Are there other ways that we unilaterally can act to both provide housing and ensure that the housing, that the jobs that go with that housing are local, however we define local? I think that would be, I'm tired of having this fight at Cal Cities, frankly. This would be a very fine way to get around that problem. Thank you.
Yeah, I think what I suggested is going to be tricky. So, but they'll make a shot at it, right? So
that's why I wanted to broaden it out.
I had a quick follow-up. I just want to make the point, make sure it's clear, my point about how much space we allocate for a specific kind of business type. I have no doubt that we have makers that want to expand space, or they're interested in possibly going to South Vasco. Question is how much space we put in a quantitative way into a general plan that we are putting something on the line when we say we're going to do 25,000 square feet of maker space. Well, it needs to be more than we have a maker or two that says we'd like to do that. It has to be an analysis behind each of these decisions. So that's my point. How much we allocate has to be based on something more than, qualitative ideas or hopes and prayers. And if we build it, they will come philosophy. So that was my point. There's just got to be a business case behind each of these. That was the point I just want to clarify. Thanks. And with that, I am done.
yeah, I like you having emphasized that last point. We're all kind of quantitative. And the thought is, it's the maker space, but the industrial, the kind of space that we're thinking of converting to housing or making more of this space, just make sure that the demand is there. Right, or projected, but but we got to make the whole, because we can't just do one element and not think through the impact. So I think it's 9 o'clock. We take a break at this time. So we'll come back at 9:10 and do the bond.
Can I have one more comment on that? Sorry, I can't let the we're all data driven go. Yeah, I'm data driven too, but I do the qualitative. And I also know the power of a vision to create demand. And so I think that one of the things we need to be looking at is not only what's there now, but what can be created. And so to some degree, I would say that it's not winging a prayer, it's not dreams and prayers or whatever. I don't know, prayers don't belong here anyway. But it is vision, and the visions that we create. And I think that we're doing that as a city need to be taken into account as well. So thank you for letting me have the last word, maybe.
Sure. Okay. We'll come back at 9:10. So you guys got to your direction, right?
We can do more.
Yeah. Right on.
Okay, welcome back. It's 9:10. What are we? Oh, Trish is in. Oh, okay. We're not ready yet.
Mayor, can you also look for the count in from?
Okay, are you guys ready? Everybody ready? Okay, we're on to item 6.2. Resolution approving, authorizing, and directing a lease financing of the L Street Garage and related improvements, etc. So we have the staff presentation, please.
Yes, Honorable Mayor Warner and members of the City Council, this is your City Manager, Mariana Marasheva. Item 6.2 will be presented by Administrative Services Director Tina Olson. Ms. Olson?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. I'm Tina Olson, your Administrative Services Director. I'll be presenting the item on the proposed issuance of the 2022 Certificates of Participation, or I'm going to call it COP for the rest of the evening, to fund the L Street Garage project. But first, I wanted to acknowledge Eric Peterson to my right, and David Doyle, who's on Zoom. They're members of the Finance Division, and they worked with the city's municipal advisor, bond counsel, and disclosure counsel to prepare all the materials before you this evening that are required for the bond issuance. I also want to acknowledge Melissa Schick, the city's municipal advisor, and Chris Lynch, the city's bond counsel, who are also joining this meeting. They're on Zoom and are available to answer questions. All right, financing the L Street parking garage. As you're aware, you previously approved the decision of the design of the L Street garage, which will be a 4-level parking garage with 460 spaces east of L Street between Veterans Way and First Street. The project is estimated to cost $40.4 million. The engineering division expects to receive bids for the project the end of October. The proposed COPs will finance the $40.4 million project cost, as well as a total of $320,000 in issuance costs. That pays for the municipal advisor, bond and disclosure council on the rating agency fees, and $269,000 for the underwriter's discount. The actual bond issuance will depend on the amount of the awarded construction contract, and we'll get into the timing to see how that works a little bit later on. And then assuming a 4.38% pretty conservative interest rate, that's about 50 basis points more than the August 22nd market rates. The COP will result in a little over $1.7 million payment in 2023 and a little over $2.4 million annually thereafter through 2052 for a total of $72.8 million. And you might also recall Council adopted a resolution on June 13th of this year that declared the city's intent to reimburse itself for expenditures on the L Street parking garage with proceeds from these COPs. Just a slide on interest rates. See it kind of jumbling around there. The current tax exempt interest rate on a 10-year AAA rated bond is 2.67%. And as you can see, it's been fluctuating a bit in 2022. We'll know the actual 2022 COP interest rates once we sell the certificates. This was the COP payment schedule. We'll be issuing 30-year fixed rate debt. They'll be callable at any time after October of 2032, which means the city will be able to refinance the 2022 COP if interest rates are more favorable. There's also the 2020 COPs are the only other long-term debt obligation of the city's general fund. As a chart on the slide demonstrates, maximum total debt payments for both the 2020 and the 2022 COPs are $7.6 million, and that'll drop to $3.9 million in 2031-32. And then the leaseback security structure. I think, as you know, these are pretty common. COPs are a common financing, particularly in California and local government for capital projects. And as we said before, we've got another COP, the 2020, and that was a refinancing of several previous COP issuances. The 2022 COP will utilize City Hall and Civic Center Meeting Hall as the leased assets. We will include Rincon and Springtown libraries only if it's necessary, given the size of the bonding. And as I noted before, the city's general fund will be on the hook to pay the debt service payments, and we'll be obligated to budget that until the certificates are fully repaid in 2052. So you have before you tonight some key financing documents. There's the site lease and lease agreement that establishes the lease and lease back financing structure. The trust agreement that securitizes basically says the city is going to budget the lease payments, and it establishes the U.S. Bank of Trust Company as the trustee for the bond. And then the preliminary official statement, that includes all relevant information that an investor would need to know about the city of Livermore to determine whether to buy the city's 2020-22 COPs. And now we're looking at the issuance timeline. We are going to be presenting to S&P tomorrow, the rating, our first rating meeting. We're expecting by mid-October that S&P will issue their credit rating. We've got our fingers crossed that we'll go from AA to AAA. Late October, open construction bids. Early November, we'll release the preliminary official statement and the notice of sale to the municipal bond market. Mid-November, we'll sell the 2022 COPs. Late November, we'll close and get the proceeds. Early December, you'll award the construction contract. And then after the holidays, we'll begin the construction of the garage. So we have recommended action. Of course, number one is adopt a resolution approving the form and authorizing the execution and delivering of a site lease, lease agreement, trust agreement, and a continuing disclosure agreement in connection with the offering and sale of the City of Livermore 2020-22 certificates of participation for the L Street parking garage project, and authorizing the distribution of preliminary official statement and notice of sale in connection therewith, and authorizing execution of necessary documents, certificates, and certain other related actions. And then finally, grant the city manager and the administrative services director the authority to amend and execute documents, determine appropriateness of bond terms and conditions, and to carry out
give effect to and comply with the terms and intent of the resolution. And that concludes my presentation. Open for some questions.
Okay, thank you. I'll open public comment at this point. Does anybody who wishes to address us on this item?
Mayor, no comments have been received.
Okay, we'll close public comment and bring it back to the council. I've got a couple of questions I'll start with, and I know Vice Mayor has some, and then we'll go from there. In general, what we're trying to do is make sure that we're properly disclosing to the public everything we know about the city's finances, so that we are basically saying that we have the ability to pay back the bonds. I mean, that's the correct, that's the essence of what
Yep, exactly.
we're doing tonight, right? So, so along those lines, I just want to be a little bit more formal on some of these questions. So as part of the approval of the issuance of the 2022 certificates, staff has provided council with a draft preliminary official statement, the document that discloses key matters of the city's finances and other metrics important to bond investors. First question, can you confirm that management and staff have been closely involved in the development of the city's disclosure to ensure all city financial and other matters that would be material to an investor have been accurately reported?
Yes, I can confirm that to the best of my knowledge. Yes, we have been very involved.
Okay,
That's why I've got Eric here.
thank you. And second, is the information in the preliminary official statement true and correct in all material respects to the best of staff's knowledge?
Yes.
Thank you. I think the Vice Mayor has a question.
Yeah, thank you. So council has previously approved the city's debt management policy, which has governed the city's prudent approach to the issuance of bonds. Is the proposed issuance of certificates of precipitation in compliance with the city's debt management policy?
Now you know why I just want to call it COP.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, it is. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. The city's debt policy outlines the purposes for which the city can issue debt, including requiring the project to be financed to provide benefit to constituents in the future, because our constituents will be essentially paying the debt service for the future. In addition, our policy says that we can't use bond proceeds for maintenance expenses or operating expenses, and I can guarantee that the garage should be benefiting constituents into the future, and we're only using it to fund capital costs. Another part of the debt policy that I thought was interesting is it states that the cumulative annual general fund debt service payments cannot exceed 7.5% of the previous fiscal year's general fund revenue, and the 2020 COP and the 2022 COP debt service will equal 5.6% of fiscal year 21-22 actual general fund revenues. So that's below the ceiling established in the debt policy. And reading through the rest of the policy, we're in compliance. Those seem like
Great.
the most significant ones.
Thank you.
Okay, any other council member questions? All right, could I get a motion to adopt the resolution?
Yeah, I'll move staff recommendation.
I'll second on both parts A and B here. So any further conversation, discussion?
So this is simply my usual reminder that when we finance garages to the tune of $40,000, excuse me, whoa, add a few zeros there.
That's per space.
No, it's not. It's more than that per space. I
Yeah.
think the space is around 60,000 per space. Is that correct? Something along those lines? That is a choice we are making as a city about how we want to spend our money. And I just want to make sure, I mean, I'm going to vote for this because it's the responsible thing to do given where we are and what were the decisions we've made. But I just want to remind everybody that how we spend our money is what our values are. And what we are saying when we build garages is effectively that we value cars. I just want to make that, I want everybody to remember that that's what we're doing.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, and no further conversation. Do we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Carling,
Aye.
Councilmember Kick. Aye. Councilmember Monroe,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Bonanno,
Aye.
Mayor Warner.
Aye, passes unanimously, and thank you. A lot of work, and looking forward to the construction starting. I think the other thing I want to notice for everyone is that the schedule that you put out there, that we got phase 1 going right now, but that phase 2 won't happen until after the holidays, and the opportunity for the merchants to make their numbers for the year. So the other thing I'd like to point out that this is the number 1 priority for the we heard from our community. And I also think this is probably the last garage we're going to build, best I can tell. So I think there we go. So let me, so we're now, we're on to item 7.0, council committee reports and matters initiated by the city manager, attorney, staff, and council members. So Councilmember Kick. Thank you.
So it's been a busy month for council, but not for me. I haven't been able to go to lots of stuff lately, which I'm a little bit bummed about, but I guess that's what happens when you have to go to work or whatever. I did go to a LACTA meeting today, and on August 7th, I was very honored to to watch Max throw the first pitch at the Little League World Series. And that was a very big moment. As a family baseball big sister for many years, watching my son do that was extra special. So, and then it was great to have the readers come in and watch my own kids reluctantly participate. Because it's not cool to come to work with mom, but I thought it was so cool how many other kids thought that we were cool, but not my own. And I just love that program so much. I know the library people are gone now, but I'll tell them thank you on my own. You could just see how excited some of these kids were and how they thought we were cool, which, maybe they should tell my kids that. Anyways, that's all I have for right now. And it's nice to see everybody in person. Meeting 3, third time's a charm. I think we did all right. That's all I got.
Okay, Councilmember Carling.
Yes, in addition to the material that I presented to the city clerk this morning, that appears in the report, I had some climate meetings. Also, Vice Mayor Bonanno and I met with some staff at Sandia National Lab to learn about their net zero plan for the upcoming several years. The Sandia, California site's planning to go to, like I said, net zero over the next several years. And I think that it's important for me to know and understand what they're doing as a city official, because they're in the city limits. And it's very encouraging to learn that they are taking this seriously as the rest of us. And we don't often hear what the laboratories are doing. And it was an opportunity to hear their plans for the future to go to net zero. Last week, Councilmember Monroe and I, along with, I think, 6 city staff, were down at the League of California Cities annual meeting in Long Beach. Went down on Wednesday, returned on Friday. A number of joint sessions that we each get to select that might be of interest to us. Very interesting meeting, as always. I think in large part, and I guess a couple of things. One is, of course, I think we all learned something new, which we bring back to Livermore, but I think it's also interesting to hear some of the things that people are doing that maybe we're ahead of. And I think, again, that's reassuring that we've made some important decisions. And I'll say one is on climate. I heard some things, from big cities, relatively large cities, bigger than ours, that are just now beginning to install EV chargers. Well, we have way more than they do at this point, and we're going to have more. So I think it's, again, reassuring to hear what other cities are doing. And then Saturday night, just as a plug for the Bankhead, they had their annual Brilliance at the Bankhead, which includes, of course, a big fundraiser. It was not sold out, but it was probably 75 or 80%. Very nice evening. Fortunately, it had cooled down enough by Saturday night, and it was pretty windy earlier in the day, but by the time dinner was served outside at 5:30, it was just fine. It was a lovely evening all around. So again, Brilliance at the Bankhead, and they're doing a great job of providing entertainment to our community. Thank you.
Councilmember Monroe.
So before I don't want to forget this, so I'm gonna, I don't know whether this is actually matters initiated or not, but I did want to go back to the first public comment, and I only got part of her first name is Barbara. I got that much. Barbara Reynolds. I was, so I understand that that the city is doing as much, is communicating, is working with PG&E. I'm more concerned with the points she raised about those people who are really suffering, particularly the elderly. And without committing, I'm always, we all know about committing city resources, but I would like to find some way to understand what we can do from our end beyond communication as it's part of the climate emergency, it's part of climate adaptation. What role can we take beyond what we're already doing? So I don't know if that's a report back to council, if it's a council discussion, if it's simply looking into it, but if there's 3 nods, yep, go ahead.
Through the mayor, if I may, Councilmember Monroe, we can gather information on the current efforts that exist through city staff as well as through our partners, nonprofits, community services organizations, and provide that information to you in the form of a memo.
And then
That's
take it from there,
acceptable?
yeah. Okay, I mean, my particular concern is that we have probably places for some of the underserved homeless, for example, to go. But I'm particularly concerned about the elderly in this case. So,
And again, we can.
Thank you.
Absolutely. We will provide that information in a memo. I know personally by communicating with staff in the last few days, there have been diligent efforts made to directly reach out to the most vulnerable, both sheltered and unsheltered, but we can provide that level of detail to you in a memo.
I appreciate it. And as always, I think the community might want to know as well. So, so then it actually has been quite a busy month. I realized that the last, my notes here go back into July. So I'm just going to pull out a couple of things. One is I had the opportunity. So I talk very often about being a sociologist and bringing sociology to the city. And in the beginning of August, August 7th, Assistant City Manager Christine Martin and I, with the input from Chief Jeremy Young and Councilmember Carling, presented at the Association, American Sociological Association, to bring to people who study what cities do and who study equity and inclusion, what it looks like on the ground, what the issues are, what's possible, what isn't possible, what can be done. The result from that, we got very good feedback from the people we presented to. Not a huge number. 8 o'clock Sunday morning turns out not to be an ideal spot, but the results of our presentation will live long, we hope, because what we found out from going through that experience is that there are at least 3 stories we can tell. In the interest of time, I'll spare you what they are, but you'll pay attention. They'll be coming forward. I too attended, I'm just trying to figure out what else to talk about. I'm just going to talk about the thing I have to talk about because it's required, and that is the Cal Cities Annual Conference and Expo, along with Councilmember Carling and 6 other people from 6 other members of staff. Wonderful conference, 487 cities, over 4,000 members of people were attended representing those 487 cities. Wonderful information on one of the keynotes was on the future of California and just the need to deal with a number of our problems: climate, housing, homelessness, transportation, all of those things at a regional level, that we are not islands, that no city is an island. I think that as we go forward, it's really important to remember that. There was a very fine presentation on different ways to address housing, and both taking the common goal, but doing it in very different ways depending on which community you were in. So for example, one of the cities was Truckee, had a very different situation than did Emeryville, and again, a very different situation than 9 cities banding together in the Imperial Valley. Common goals, different solutions, that's what we should be aiming for. And I think I will leave it there, again, in the interests of giving someone else a chance.
Okay, Vice Mayor Bonanno.
Yeah, first I want to thank Councilmember Monroe for bringing up the comments we heard earlier from Barbara Reynolds. I agree 100%. I think there is some more, perhaps an integrating function we can add to what's already going on. I mean, I know what I worry about are seniors. I mean, I see them every week. Many of the seniors I deliver food to do not have air conditioning, and we give them Meals on Wheels provides us flyers to leave with them about where the cooling centers are. Some of them don't drive, some of them aren't mobile enough to get themselves there. So there's more that I think we can do. And Ms. Reynolds, had a good suggestion. I don't know if it's practical or not, but to have some kind of a way we know where people are, and we have some ability to make sure that everybody who might be in a very precarious situation, either because it's just too hot, or they have maybe medical equipment that if we lose power, they have no backup. I know EVCE actually has a program where they provide small generators for people's medical equipment. But I don't know whether people know about that. Making some of those connections and integrating some of these things that might be already being done, I think could be a function the city might be best equipped to provide. So I really support that and would be anxious to hear. And, any way you'd need any of us to participate, I'd certainly be interested in that. So a couple of things I just wanted to mention. The mayor and I attended the Livermore Lab 70th anniversary event a few days ago, which was really cool because there are 9 living past and current laboratory directors, and all of them spoke about, from their perspective, a little bit about the past and a little bit about the future. It was a very cool presentation, and it was the last speaker was our current director, who is the first female director at Livermore Lab. So I was really, really happy to attend that. But it was a great event. At LAFTA, we had actually our meetings today, board meetings today. I'll just say that the executive director position is, we're moving along. I'm on the subcommittee to have done the preliminary interviews. We have 3 finalists. We'll be interviewing them next week on the 21st, and we would hopefully find the right candidate and begin negotiations for a contract. So I think the hope is that by October we have identified and hopefully have under contract a new LAFTA executive director. And the last thing I'll say was we also had a LAVMA meeting, the Livermore Amador Valley Water Management Agency meeting, and something that maybe some of us have all heard about, the red algae problem they have at Lake Merritt and some of the other freshwater bodies that are connected to the bay. What they've discovered, and it was huge fish die-off. I mean, probably most people have heard about it, but I actually was around Lake Merritt several times, and it was nasty. I mean, you could see dead fish, big fish. It was pretty dramatic. And what I heard is one of the causes is all of the treated wastewater that eventually makes its way to the bay. filters out all the toxins, or let me say, as much of the toxins as possible and all the really hazardous materials, but it doesn't filter out many of the nitrogen compounds. And algae loves nitrogen, so the algae is going wild with the elevated temperatures. It's this perfect storm of lots of nitrogen, elevated temperatures, too much algae, and so they're already seeing it start to correct when the temperatures have dropped. But the wastewater may be part of the problem, and there may have to be something to be done about that. I don't know whether anything can be done about it, but I thought that combinations of things was kind of interesting. And I will leave it there. Thank you.
Okay, I also enjoyed the lab anniversary celebration. I came here in '76, just before the 25th anniversary, and then I was around for the 50th. Now this is the 70th, so just got to keep going, I guess. But anyway, it was having worked on some of the stuff that they talked about. It was just interesting. And I think the Vice Mayor mentioned the current lab director spoke last and gave a good optimistic view of the future of the lab and what's its mission going to be. And they've got, she enumerated 4 areas. I won't try and remember all 4, but all of them sounded very important for our society, and something that the lab could make a very good contribution to. So that's very encouraging. The other thing I'll mention is of the stuff that I did was the Valley Link is going along well, and really is encouraged to think about a hydrogen alternative for the powering, and that has a good, people are optimistic that the funding from the state and federal government will be available for that. So that's going well. And I've been working on a subcommittee on the hydrogen alternative, and it's been very interesting, and I'm encouraged by the future there. So at this point, that will end item 7.0, and we'll now move into a closed session. And before we go there, is there anybody in the audience that would like to address us with respect to the closed session items?
Our first speaker is Greg Scott.
Standing on the appeal for the Eden Housing Project, and you're so happy with that little decision on the appeal, but you're not so happy that the Save the Hill group won their appeal against you. So you go and try to get their decision delisted. That is that's against the citizenry, what you did there. So I just wanted to do this as a public record of your hypocrisy of the way you've treated these cases on the appeals. Thank you.
Any other comments?
That concludes public comment.
Okay, closed public comment. We'll now go into closed session and then come back afterwards. And I think we're expecting it to be before 10:15, I would think. Okay, we're back from a closed session. Excuse me. Do we have anything to report?
Mr. Mayor, this is your city attorney, Jason Alcala. No, the city council did not take any reportable action in closed session. That concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. So we're now on to adjournment. And it's sad to say that the city of Livermore and this community have lost two longtime public servants. Former city attorney and judge John A. Al Lewis passed away on August 17th, and former Mayor Milo Nordyke, who passed away on July 22nd. Both men had a long history of public service to Livermore and passed away at the age of 92. This meeting is adjourned in their honor and memory to a regular meeting on September 26 at 7 p.m. held in person and remotely. Meeting adjourned.
Excuse me. Can we please check the date?
Madam Clerk?
Apologies, Mayor. That meeting has been moved from the 26th to the 27th.
So I didn't hear that. So
The meeting has been moved from the 26th to the 22nd. Excuse me, to the
20
27th.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay, we're going to adjourn to a regular meeting on the 27th at 7 p.m. held in person and remotely. So we're adjourned. I'm a talking head. I just read what's there.
I meant to say to closed session.